The slave market on planet Krail-9 was almost empty. The war had ended 3 months ago, but the scars were still fresh. Broken machines, torn flags, and silent streets told the story of a world that had lost everything. Many aliens had been captured during the war, and now they were sold like animals, some for work, others for worse. Daniel, a human scavenger, walked through the dusty marketplace. He was tired, dirty, and only looking for spare parts. He had no plan to buy anyone. He didn't believe in owning lives, but he came here sometimes to sell tech, and sometimes to witness the sad truth of this galaxy. Shouts filled the air as traders screamed prices. Alien men, women, and even children were displayed behind cages and glass walls. Daniel passed them, looking away when he could. He hated this place. But then he saw her. She was standing alone at the far end of the market, away from the other cages. Her skin was light purple, glowing faintly under the twin suns. Her long violet hair hung down her back, messy but beautiful. Her clothes were worn, and her arms held 2 small children close. Both kids had pale skin like her and stared at the ground. The sign above her read, "Alien widow with offspring, unsellable, damaged property." People walked by and laughed. "Too big to serve," one alien male scoffed. "Too proud." "Still acts like she's royalty," said another. "No one wants 3 mouths to feed." Daniel's eyes stayed on her. There was something about the way she stood, not begging, not crying, just standing tall with her arms around her kids. She had been through something terrible, and yet she was still standing. He turned to walk away. But then, something soft stopped him. "Please," said a tiny voice. He turned around. The younger child, a small girl no older than 6, had stepped forward. She held her mother's leg tightly, but looked up at Daniel with large silver eyes. "Don't leave my mother here," she whispered. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. The trader noticed and rushed forward. "Ah, good sir. You want her? No charge. Free. Just take her away, she's no good to us anymore." Daniel frowned. "She's not a tool. She's a widow." The trader shrugged. "Her husband was some war hero, killed in the last battle. Her kind has no value anymore. They lost the war." Daniel walked up slowly. The alien woman stared at him, her expression calm but guarded. Her hands held her children tighter. "I'm not here to buy a slave," Daniel said quietly. Then, "Why are you standing there?" She replied coldly. He looked at the children, then at her. "You don't belong here." "No," she said, voice firm. "But here we are." A silence passed between them. Around them, the market continued. Shouts, noise, heat. But in this moment, it felt like only the 3 of them existed. Daniel sighed. "I have a small shelter on the edge of the ridge. It's not much, but it's safe. I can give you food. You can decide what to do after that." The woman didn't move. Older child, a boy, looked up at her, confused. The younger girl tugged her arm. "Please, Mama," she said. "He looks kind. Why would you help us?" The widow asked, her voice softening slightly. Daniel shrugged. "Because no one else is going to, and because someone should." She looked away for a moment, then finally nodded. "I am Soraya," she said. "Daniel," he replied. "Let's get out of here." The trader quickly unlocked the gate before anyone changed their mind. "Good luck, human. She's all yours." Daniel didn't reply. He helped carry the younger child while Soraya took the boy's hand. Together, they walked away from the market. As they reached the edge of the desert ridge, the silence between them returned. Soraya kept looking at the sky, the ground, and sometimes at Daniel. "You don't expect anything from me?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "No, I'm not like them. Most humans aren't either, she admitted. But most still walk away. He gave her a small smile. I didn't walk away. That night in Daniel's small metal shelter, Soraya sat with her children around a warm lamp. The children ate hungrily. Soraya didn't eat much. She just watched Daniel. He sat across the room, cleaning an old radio. He didn't speak. He gave them space. But in his silence, she felt something new. Not fear. Not pity. Hope. The next morning, Daniel woke up to the sound of soft breathing. The small shelter was warm inside, but surrounded by cold desert winds outside. The sky was turning light blue, and the first sun was rising above the rocks. He sat up on his small bed and looked across the room. Soraya was sitting with her back against the wall. Her eyes were open. She hadn't slept. Her arms held her too. Children who were finally resting peacefully after days of fear. You didn't sleep? Daniel asked gently. I couldn't, Soraya answered. Too quiet. Too safe. I'm not used to that anymore. Daniel gave a small smile. Get used to it. She didn't smile back. She looked down at her kids, then at Daniel. You really don't want anything from me? Daniel shook his head. I told you, you're not a slave here. You're just people who needed help. Soraya closed her eyes for a second. Back on my planet, I was a general's wife. We lived in a home made from crystal rock. My children had tutors. Guards protected us. Then the war came. Her voice cracked slightly, but she kept speaking. My husband died during the last battle. Our home was burned. I ran with my children. We were caught by raiders. They sold us in pieces. First our things, then our freedom. Daniel listened in silence. He didn't interrupt. They didn't want me, she said. Not because I was dangerous, but because I was broken. A widow. A mother. Too many mouths to feed. Too much sadness in my face. Daniel stood up and walked over. He handed her a hot cup of water. You're not broken, Soraya. She looked at the cup, then took it slowly. Why do you care? He thought for a second. Because someone should. Later that day, Daniel took a walk with the children to show them the area. The older boy, Naran, stayed close to his sister. He didn't talk much, just watched everything with wide eyes. The younger girl, Luma, smiled more now. She held Daniel's hand and asked questions about the desert animals and strange human machines. Soraya watched from the shelter door. It was the first time in weeks she had seen her children laugh. Even a little. She didn't understand this human. Most humans were cold or cruel. He was different, but she couldn't trust too fast. Life had taught her that kindness often came with a price. That evening, Soraya stood outside the shelter, watching the twin moons rise. Daniel joined her, carrying a warm blanket. You don't have to stand out in the cold, he said. I don't. Feel the cold, she replied. Daniel placed the blanket on a rock and sat beside her. They'll come for me, she whispered. The ones who sold us, they'll want me back. Let them come, Daniel said calmly. I'm not afraid of them. Soraya turned to face him. Why? Why risk anything for me? Because you were left behind, Daniel said.
Because
no one else came for you. Because your children deserve to grow up with someone who won't leave them. Soraya looked down. I can't give you anything. I didn't ask for anything, he replied. A long silence stretched between them. The desert wind howled softly. Then Soraya said something unexpected. When they tried to sell me, they asked who would take a useless mother with no husband. A woman with too much pride and too many tears. They laughed when no one stepped forward. They called me a burden. Daniel looked straight into her eyes. They were wrong. That night, Soraya couldn't sleep again, but for a different reason. She kept thinking about Daniel's words. She She wasn't sure if it was hope or fear that was growing inside her. She watched her children sleep, wrapped in blankets Daniel had given them. They looked peaceful, like they had found a new world. And maybe they had. In the morning, Daniel woke up to the smell of something different. Soraya was cooking. Using herbs and roots from her satchel, she had made a soup. It smelled strange, but not bad. "I thought I'd cook," she said quietly. "It's not much, but it's something." Daniel took the bowl and smiled. "It smells like hope." For the first time, Soraya smiled too. Daniel had always lived alone. His small shelter was built from old starship metal and desert stone. It had one main room, a water tank, a storage corner, and a sleeping pad. No decorations, no colors, no laughter. Just silence. But now, that silence was gone. Luma giggled as she chased a desert beetle across the floor. Neyron sat quietly, fixing a broken tool with careful hands. Soraya stood near the heater, drying the children's clothes. She moved with grace, even after all she had suffered. Daniel leaned against the doorway, watching them. His home, once empty and cold, was now filled with movement, breath, and life. It felt strange. Good. But strange. Soraya noticed his look. "We're taking up too much space," she said, her voice soft. "No," Daniel replied. "It's not that." "Then what is it?" He paused. "I forgot what it felt like to have people around." She lowered her eyes. "If it's too much, it's not," he said quickly. Soraya gave a small nod. She didn't speak again, but her shoulders relaxed just a little. That night, Neyron had trouble sleeping. He kept waking up, looking around the room, afraid of something. Daniel noticed and sat beside him. "Are you scared?" Daniel asked. Neyron nodded. "In the cages, they said someone would come and take my sister. They said Mama couldn't protect." U.S. Daniel's face turned serious. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "No one is taking your sister or your mother. Not while I'm here." Neyron looked at him with big eyes. "Even if they're stronger than you." Daniel smiled. "Then I'll find a way to be stronger." For the first time, Neyron smiled back. Soraya had been listening quietly from the other side of the room. Her heart ached. She had tried to be strong for so long. But in this human, her children had found something she could not give them: security. The next day, Daniel showed the children how to plant water roots near the rocks. They were alien plants that absorbed moisture from the wind. He had learned to survive using these small tricks. Now he shared them. Luma clapped when the roots turned green. "It's magic." Daniel laughed. "It's science. But it feels like magic, doesn't it?" Soraya watched them from a distance. Her eyes stayed on Daniel. He was different from anyone she had known. He never asked questions that hurt. He never stared at her scars. He never looked at her like a burden. That evening, she sat beside him as the sky turned orange. "I never thanked you," she said. "You don't need to." Daniel replied, "I do," she insisted. "Most would have walked past me, or worse." Daniel looked at her. "I didn't do anything special." "You did something rare," she whispered. "You saw us." They sat in silence, the warmth of the desert sunset wrapping around them. But peace never lasted long on Krail 9. 2 nights later, Daniel returned from scavenging and noticed footprints near the shelter. Heavy boots, more than one pair. He didn't tell Soraya right away. He didn't want to scare the children, but he kept his pulse gun close that night. Soraya sensed the tension. "What's wrong?" she asked after the children had fallen asleep. "Someone's been watching the shelter," Daniel said quietly. "I found tracks." Soraya's face turned pale. "They've found me." "Who?" Daniel asked. "The traitors? Or worse?" "They lost Prophet when I disappeared. They'll want me back." Daniel's eyes hardened. They won't take you. They have weapons. They have power, she said. So do I, he answered. She reached out and touched his hand. I can't lose my children. Not again. You won't, Daniel promised. Not while I'm breathing. That night, Daniel didn't sleep. He sat outside with his gun ready, eyes on the dark hills. Inside the shelter, Soraya watched him. Through the small window, her heart beat fast, not from fear, but from something else. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen to protect her without asking for anything in return. And for the first time, she wondered if she could let herself believe again. Morning came with silence, not peaceful silence, but the kind that warned of something coming. Daniel stood outside the shelter, eyes scanning the horizon. His pulse gun hung on his side, ready. He hadn't slept all night. Inside, Soraya packed a small bag, extra clothes for the children, dried food. Her hands moved quickly, but her face was calm. She had lived too long with fear to show it easily now. Daniel came in and saw her. We're not running, he said. I know, Soraya replied, still folding a cloth. But I need to be ready if we must. You're not going back to them. Never planned to, she said quietly. But they don't care what I plan. They only care about what they lost. Daniel stepped closer. Then let them come. I'm not afraid. Soraya looked up at him. You should be. By noon, the children were playing inside while Daniel fixed the outer wall. Soraya stood nearby, watching the sky. She could feel the wind shift, taste the tension in the air. Then she heard something hover bikes in the distance. Daniel heard it too. He grabbed his weapon and went outside the shelter's boundary. He didn't want the fight near the children. 2 alien riders approached fast. They wore black armor and carried stun staffs. Their faces were hidden behind metal masks. Daniel raised his weapon. That's close enough. One rider pointed at him. You're harboring stolen property. Turn over the woman and the spawn, and we'll leave you alive. Daniel didn't blink. They're not property, and I'm not handing over anyone. You think you can fight us alone, human? No, Daniel replied. But I can hurt you bad enough to make the rest think. Twice, the second rider laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. She's a shame to her kind. Her people gave her up. She's nothing. Soraya's voice rang out suddenly from behind Daniel. Then why are you here for nothing? Both riders turned toward her. She stood tall, the wind lifting her dark, purple hair. Her children clung to her legs, but she didn't flinch. The lead rider hissed. You bring disgrace to your clan, widow. I brought children into a broken world and kept them alive when your kind left us to rot, she replied. That is not disgrace. That is strength. Daniel stood beside her now, weapon ready. You heard the lady. Leave. The riders exchanged a look. One clicked a button on his wristband. This isn't over. She will be claimed. The law allows it. Then let the law try, Daniel said. The riders turned and sped off into the desert. That evening, the shelter was quiet again. But this time, it wasn't empty silence. It was the quiet after a storm. The children were asleep, curled in the corner together. Soraya sat on the floor, her eyes on the fire. Daniel poured her a drink and sat down across from her. You were brave out there. I wasn't always brave, she said. When the war ended, I cried every night. I begged the stars to give me a second chance. I lost everything. My home, my status, my husband. I thought I was weak. Daniel leaned forward. You survived all that. That's not weakness. That's power. Soraya looked at him. My own people called me a shame, a failure as a wife, a disgrace as a warrior's widow. They were wrong, Daniel said. A moment passed. Then she asked softly, why do you keep standing up for me? Daniel thought for a long moment before answering. Because you remind me that not all strength comes from a gun. You kept your children alive in a world that wanted to break you. That kind of strength, that's rare. Her lips trembled, just slightly. No one's ever said that to me before. Well, he said, maybe they should have. Soraya stood and moved to the window. Outside, the sky was clear. The twin moons were rising, casting soft silver light on the sand. She turned back. To Daniel, I was a widow, a slave, a mother with nothing. And you saw more than that. Daniel stood too. I saw you, not what the world labeled you. They stood silently, the fire crackling between them. Her eyes held tears, but she didn't let them fall. She had cried enough in her life. Then she whispered, "Thank you for giving me back my voice." "You never lost it," Daniel said gently. The world just stopped listening. The desert was quiet the next morning, but Daniel didn't feel calm. He stood outside, watching the sun rise. Red and gold light painted the sky. His pulse gun rested on the rock beside him. He had cleaned and checked it twice already. Something didn't feel right downside the shelter. Soraya helped the children wash up. Luma was humming, and Nayron practiced writing alien letters in the dust with a stick. The small family was slowly healing, but the danger wasn't gone. Soraya stepped out and walked up to Daniel. "You feel it too, don't you?" Daniel nodded. "They won't stop." The riders were scouts. "I know military eyes when I see them. They'll bring more next time," Soraya whispered. He looked at her. "Then we'll be ready." Soraya sighed. "They don't come for justice, Daniel. They come for power, for control, for punishment." "Don't care what they come for," he said. "They won't take you." 2 hours later, a strange hum echoed through the canyons. Not bikes this time, ships. Daniel grabbed his binoculars and climbed a nearby rock. His heart sank. 3 armored transport vehicles were approaching from the North Ridge. Their engines stirred clouds of sand. Soldiers 12 at least. He could see the shining metal of their armor and the long rifles strapped to their backs. He ran back to the shelter. "They're here," he told Soraya, "and it's not a small visit." She gathered her children quickly. Her hands didn't shake. She had prepared for this moment for years. "What will we do?" Nayron asked, frightened. Daniel crouched in front of him. "Stay quiet. Stay low. No matter what happens, don't leave your mother's side." Luma clutched her brother tightly. The soldiers arrived within minutes. They didn't knock. They surrounded the shelter in a circle, weapons drawn. The leader stepped forward tall, sharp-eyed, wearing a red commander's badge on his chest. Daniel stepped outside, hands raised but firm. "State your reason for coming." "You have stolen alien property inside," the commander said coldly. The widow Soraya and her offspring belonged to the Zarnok Trade Authority. "No one belongs to anyone," Daniel replied. "They're free now." The commander smirked. "Freedom is not yours to give, human. She's marked. She carries the registration of a slave." Daniel's jaw tightened. "She carries scars, not chains." The commander waved his hand. "Step aside. We will reclaim the property." Daniel stepped forward instead. "You'll have to go through me." Weapons clicked all around. Inside the shelter, Soraya pulled her children close. She could hear every word. Her heart pounded, not for herself, but for Daniel. "I have rights," Daniel shouted. "Under Earth's Federation law, this shelter is protected. She asked for asylum, and I gave it." The commander narrowed his eyes. "Earth law does not matter here." "Then I guess we've got a problem," Daniel said, reaching slowly for his weapon. But before anything else could happen, Soraya stepped out. "Stop," she said clearly. All heads turned toward her. She walked past Daniel and stood in front. Of the soldiers, her head high. You call me property. You call me a disgrace. But look at me. I have survived war. I have protected my children. I found safety when none of you gave it. I am not a thing. I am not a shame. I am a mother, a fighter, and I choose to stay here. The commander raised his rifle. You don't get to choose. Daniel's gun was up instantly. Then try me. Tension filled the air. One wrong move on blood would spill. But something shifted. One of the younger soldiers hesitated. He looked at Soraya, then at his commander. Sir, she's right. She's not a danger. She has children. The commander snapped, You dare question orders. She's not a slave anymore, the young soldier said. She never should. Have been, others began murmuring. Doubt spread through the ranks like fire. The commander cursed. Cowards, all of you. Daniel stepped forward, voice steady. Leave now, or things will get ugly. The commander looked around, realizing he had lost control. With a furious growl, he turned away. Mark my words, human. You've made enemies today. Then add it to the list, Daniel replied. The soldiers slowly retreated, following their broken leader. After they left, Daniel collapsed onto a rock, breathing hard. Soraya walked over and kneeled beside him. You were ready to die for us, she whispered. He looked at her. You shouldn't have had to walk out there, but I did, she said softly. Because I'm not afraid anymore. He looked into her eyes, and for the first time, saw peace there. That night, the shelter was quiet once more. Not because of fear, but because of safety. Real, earned safety. Daniel tucked the children in. Soraya sat beside him near the fire. She whispered, I think, this place might be home now. He nodded slowly. Feels like it. The desert night was cold and calm. Inside the small shelter, the fire crackled gently. Shadows danced. On the walls, Luma and Nuran were fast asleep, wrapped in thick blankets. Their tiny faces peaceful for the first time in weeks. Soraya sat near the fire. Her legs crossed, her violet hair glowing softly under the lamp. She watched Daniel as he worked quietly, fixing an old generator. It had been 3 days since the soldiers left. 3 quiet days. No threats, no more footsteps in the sand. Just silence and safety. But Soraya's heart was not quiet. She had lived in fear for so long, for her children, for herself. But now, something else filled that space inside her chest. Something confusing, terrifying. Warmth. Daniel finished tightening a screw and stretched his back. Shit keep it running for another week. Soraya gave a soft smile. You fix everything. He chuckled. Not everything. It's just old machines and broken radios. She looked at him, her eyes serious now. You fixed us. Daniel froze for a second, then looked away. You were never broken, he said softly. Soraya lowered her eyes. I was, not just in body, but inside. When my husband died, I didn't cry. Not because I didn't love him, but because I couldn't afford to fall apart. I had to stay strong for my children. I stopped feeling. I became cold, empty. You were surviving, Daniel said gently. Not everyone understands how hard that is. She nodded. But when I came here, something changed. You gave us food, safety. You didn't ask for anything back. You listened. My children laugh again. They sleep through the night. They smile at you. He smiled. They're amazing kids. Brave, like their mother. There was a long pause. Soraya took a slow breath and then said something that shook the silence. Would you take us as your family? Daniel turned to her. What? She looked down. I know it's sudden, and I know I have nothing to offer. but I want to ask. Not as a slave, not as someone begging, but as a woman who wants her children to grow up safe. With someone who makes them feel protected. Her voice trembled slightly. I've lived as a widow for so long, Daniel. I don't want pity. I just want to belong again. Not just for me, for them. Daniel didn't speak right away. The fire cracked softly between them. He stood up slowly and walked over to her. He knelt down, so their eyes met. You've never asked for anything, he said. Not once. You stayed strong when others would have broken. You've raised two beautiful, smart kids in a cruel galaxy. You didn't have to ask. Soraya's lips parted slightly, uncertain. Because I was already thinking about it, Daniel continued. You three are already part of my life. You've filled this cold shelter with something I didn't know I was missing. He reached out and took her hand gently. I'd be honored to call you family, Soraya gasped softly. Her eyes filled with tears, but not the kind of pain she was used to. These were tears of hope. That night, Soraya sat closer to Daniel than she ever had. Her head rested on his shoulder. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel warmth. Not from a fire, but from another soul. You're not like others, she whispered. I could say the same about you, Daniel replied. The next morning, the children noticed something had changed. Luma ran to Soraya. Mama, you look happy. Soraya smiled, kissed her forehead, and nodded. I am. Naran looked at Daniel. Are you going to stay with us forever now? Daniel knelt down beside him. If your mother agrees, I will. And if you two don't mind me being around all the time? Naren grinned. Only if you let me fix the radio with you again. Daniel laughed. Deal. Later that day, Soraya walked to the same ridge where she had once stood in fear. Now she stood in peace. Daniel joined her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. We should build something bigger, she said. For all of us. Daniel nodded. A real home. With strong walls, she said. And a roof that doesn't leak, he added. They both laughed quietly. But more than that, Soraya whispered. A place where my children don't have to hide, where I don't have to be afraid. Daniel squeezed her hand. Then let's build that. Together. 3 weeks later, the shelter didn't look the same anymore. The walls were stronger, patched with new metal and smooth stone. The roof no longer leaked, and the dusty corners had been cleaned. New shelves held food, tools, and soft blankets. But the biggest change wasn't the shelter itself. It was the feeling inside it. Luma ran around with a ribbon Daniel had made from old cloth. Nayron helped arrange small stones outside, making a path from the door to the fire pit. The children laughed more now, like they had always lived in joy. Inside. Soraya stood in front of a small mirror. She wore a simple white robe, freshly washed and wrapped with a silver thread around her waist. Her long purple hair flowed freely down her back. Her eyes held nervousness, but also peace. Daniel waited outside, shirt cleaner than usual, his hands shaking just a little. He had faced danger, hunger, and soldiers, but this moment was something else. He wasn't saving someone now. He was saying yes to something new. The ceremony was quiet. Just them and the stars. There were no guests, no crowd, no flowers. Only the wind, the firelight, and two hearts that had healed side by side. Soraya stepped out and walked toward Daniel. The moons reflected off her glowing skin. The children stood beside her, holding hands, dressed in clean robes too. Daniel took her hand. I don't have fancy words, he said. But I promise this, I will protect you. Not because I have to, but because I want to. You're not a guest here anymore. This is your home. You're not a burden. You're not a slave. You're my family. Soraya's eyes shimmered. And I promise to stand beside you, not behind. You? I'm not broken anymore. I'm not running. With you, I have found something stronger than a past hope. They didn't need a priest or a paper. Their vows were written in survival, in kindness, in quiet moments of care. And when they kissed, the children clapped, giggling with joy. Luma hugged Soraya tightly. Mama, you look like a queen. Soraya smiled down at her. No, my love, just a wife now. Later that night, Daniel sat by the fire with Naren on his lap. Soraya rested her head on his shoulder, while Luma curled up beside her mother. The stars above blinked slowly, peaceful. I never thought I'd have this, Soraya whispered. Daniel turned to her. You deserve it. I wasn't sure, she said. After the war, after being sold, I felt like my life had ended. Daniel looked at the children, but it didn't. It just paused. She smiled. And you pressed play again. The next morning, Soraya began planting herbs outside the shelter. She hummed softly as she worked. Daniel repaired the solar panel with Naran's help. Luma collected wildflowers to decorate the doorway. No guards, no fear, no orders barked from cruel masters. Just a new life built from kindness. That afternoon, a caravan passed through the edge of the desert. A few traders stopped and looked at the shelter from a distance. One of them asked, "Isn't that the widow? The worthless one with kids?" An old alien answered, "Not anymore. She has a home now. A human claimed her. A slave." "No." The old one replied, shaking his head. "A wife." That night, Daniel and Soraya stood under the stars again. She reached for his hand. "I want to raise our children here. Not in fear, but in love. We will," he promised. "And if the world comes for us again, they'll find we're stronger together." They stood quietly for a moment. Then Soraya whispered, "You didn't just save my life, Daniel. You gave it back." He looked at her, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're not a slave anymore," he said softly. "You're my wife, and I'm proud of that." Soraya smiled. In her eyes, there were no chains, no pain. Only love, only freedom, only home.